Hello, everyone. Welcome to Truth Medicine. I'm Carrie, I'm your host. And Truth Medicine is a community where we explore the lessons, stories, and life-changing moments that have brought women to heal by living their medicine of truth. And today we have a very beautiful guest, Laura Sloane, who's a spirit medium. She has a background as a professional ballroom dancer for more than 20 years, and she lives on the beautiful island of Kauai. And today we're going to dive a little deeper into her stories and her transformations that have brought her to her truth in the world. So hello, Laura. Thank you for being on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful to be here. I think it's so cool what you're doing. I really do. It's amazing, especially in this time that we're experiencing, to be able to connect with people basically all over the world in this virtual type of platform. I think it's pretty amazing, and I'm really appreciative that you have asked me to be on here, and that we can talk about this type of material, because I think it's really important, especially right now, that people connect and be able to share their stories. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for saying all that. And I would love to start with, for people that don't know you, haven't heard of you, what is it that you actually are doing in the world?
That's a good question. Well, like you said, for the better part of 20 years, I was teaching dance, and that was really gratifying for me because, dance is something that really helps change people's lives and transforms them from being, people that are really shy or don't have a lot of confidence to becoming people that really have a lot of confidence or feel all of a sudden like, they're able to walk into a room and feel comfortable or meet people. There's so many benefits to learning how to dance. So that was really gratifying for me. However, about 12 years ago, I did get into mediumship. I was always really intuitive, and I always knew that I had a special type of skill in that area. But it wasn't until I basically connected with somebody that taught me exactly how to interpret spirit messages that I really got into mediumship. And so I started doing that as somewhat of a secondary profession. And it wasn't until this year, basically, that I got really, really injured and I couldn't dance anymore. I was basically bedridden, and it pretty much forced me into mediumship only. And it was pretty interesting because people had always been telling me, you should do mediumship full time. You really should, just focus on that. You're really good at it. And I was always very hesitant. I was shy. I don't know why, but I was just scared of judgment or what people would think or feel. It was silly. But so I started doing mediumship when I couldn't dance anymore. And so that's basically what I've been doing. And what mediumship is about is, a lot of people think that it's just connecting with one person, let's say, that's passed away, and they want to connect with them, and it's about easing their grief about their passing, and that's very true, and that happens a lot. But the other part of mediumship is that the person that's receiving the reading doesn't have to know anybody that's passed away. The thing about readings is that, we're connecting to spirit, and spirit is around us constantly. So they have a much broader perspective about our lives. I've coined the term the bird's eye view of our lives. And so it's very meaningful for anybody to be able to get a reading, because they just get a perspective that they wouldn't get anywhere else. So especially in this time during the pandemic, when people are really struggling, losing their jobs and really redefining themselves, it's been really pretty special to be able, for me too, to be able to hear this broader perspective from what spirit has to say. Now, I've also coined the term the relatives. That's what I call the spirits, because I wanted something a little less out there or like ethereal. So I call the spirits the relatives, because it's basically what they are. They're like a big family, that are around us all the time, advising us and guiding us. And so it's really my goal and my main passion in life to get everybody basically on board with, leaning a little bit more on the relatives, getting a little bit more in tune so that they too can live a life where they receive guidance and support from the relatives, because it really does change your life completely when you have that type of broader perspective. And it makes things really magical. I mean, they can do things in the physical realm, and I can tell some stories in regards to that, but it's amazing what they can do within the physical realm. Just because they are in spirit doesn't mean that they don't have an effect on the physical realm here. So it's pretty amazing, and it's really my job and my goal to be able to get everybody in tune with that. So that's basically what I've been doing. And I wrote a book, and I'm almost finished with it. I'm like in the last final editing stages of it. And it's basically everything that I've learned from, 10 years of doing mediumship and doing readings, and everything that I've learned from the relatives. And it's pretty amazing, I have to say. I mean, it's pretty incredible, the things and the insights that they have. It's definitely helped me through my life. And I've had a very pretty chaotic life. So I don't think that I would have been able to get through all of that if it wasn't for the help and the guidance of spirit, basically.
Wow, thank you for sharing all that. There's a lot to unpack in that. So I want to take us back to when you got your back injury. You said you've been doing the spirit medium for 10 years. Were you, when you got this back injury, do you think that the spirit or the relatives, as you say, maybe had something to do with you, like having this this catastrophic breakdown to push you into your soul's mission?
That's such a great question. Really, I'm so glad you asked that, because I do believe that. I really do. I had such strong impulses for so many years to come away a little bit from dancing and teaching and just focus on mediumship. And, I don't know why I denied those impulses. I know now that when you have those strong, strong pushes and you feel that intuitively, that's when you know that that's what you're supposed to do. That is spirit guiding you. So, and I denied that. I pushed that away for so many years. And so I do believe that the relatives created a situation in which I really had no choice. I mean, I basically was bedridden. I had lost all pretty much feeling in my left leg, so I couldn't even walk. I really was at a point where all I could do was just be in bed. And it really forced me to redefine myself and say, okay, well, what can I do now? Oh yeah, that's right, I'm a medium. That's something I can do in bed, on the phone, and I'm really good at it. And it helps people just like dancing. In fact, it helps people even more than dancing, teaching dance. So I do believe that. I really strongly do believe that, because what happened was, then I started doing readings, and I gained the confidence back that, there was no judgment there. All I got was positive feedback. Once I injured myself and put myself really back out there publicly as a medium, I was so afraid. And all I got was positive feedback, from people. And I got a whole lot of people who wanted to have sessions, and it was only a positive experience. And so it was a big wake-up call for me that I should have followed those impulses a long time ago. Maybe I didn't have to go through being bedridden for 8 months and having to get surgery and all that. Because yes, I definitely feel like I'm more on my path now than I was, a year ago or so. I feel much more in tune with what I'm supposed to be doing now more than ever.
Yeah. What just breaking moment to, you know, you've been dancing for all these years and you love it. And you also like, you know, there's this little voice that's saying, hey, like there's more, there's something else. And, you know, you need to step into that. But you're feeling all this judgment, you're feeling shy about it. Walk us through, how did you truly summon the courage to just go forward with it?
Well, I've learned, you know, when being a medium, you don't just communicate with spirit during sessions. You know, you're constantly in touch with the relatives. You know, they're constantly communicating with you. So once I injured myself, you know, that was their guidance. You know, that's what they were saying, like, hey, you need to be doing readings. And a lot of the times when I'm fearful, they'll kind of keep at it. And I've learned through experience that when they keep pushing and keep pushing, that's when I know something needs to be done, because I've learned that that push means that that's what's happening. Like that's what needs to be done. And if I do it, I'm not going to regret it. For instance, you know, I've had a couple experiences where a relative has come through to me. And let's say it's somebody that I'm sitting with and they haven't, let's say, asked for a reading or anything like that, but their relative is coming through to me and they have a message for the person that I'm sitting with. But I'm really shy and I don't want to come across as like weird or you know, it's like, hey, your dead grandpa's sitting here with me and he has a message for you. But they'll push and they'll push and they'll push. And finally I'll say something like, hey, has your father passed away? And they'll say yes. And so this has happened numerous times, and it'll kind of turn into somewhat of a reading. And after that happens, the person that I'm with feels incredibly connected. They feel so much better. It's something that they really needed to know, really needed to hear. So I've learned that when I feel those really strong impulses, it's for a very important reason, and that I need to follow it, even if I myself, Laura, feel uncomfortable about it. So once I got injured and I felt the relatives really pushing me, it's almost like I don't have a choice at that point. It's something that I know from the broader perspective, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah. So the relatives, can you share like how they come through? Do they come through voice, imagery? Like, do you know, some spirit mediums have to like write things or doodle. How does it come through for you?
That's a good question. It comes through in many ways. I guess you could say on a day-to-day basis, it'll come through more in my mind. You know, you hear about for so long, you know, the third eye and that kind of thing. And I have to admit, when I was younger, because I had been through so much, I was a little bit more cynical. So when I would hear about these new age kind of topics like the third eye and this kind of thing, I would kind of scoff at it, like, yeah, like whatever, you know. But I have to admit that there is something behind that, because it does sort of feel like that's what it is. If I were to verbalize it, it does feel like another part of my brain that's activated. And that's how I can tell the difference between my own thoughts and what I'm receiving from them. So many times it'll just come through as an image, first of all, of the relative that's communicating. And so I know who it is. And then it'll come through as an image of that person talking. So then I can understand, okay, this is my grandma coming through, you know, communicating with me. For people that are not quite as in tune, it'll come through more as physical signs. For example, I mean, and this can be numerous ways. It can be animals, you know, birds. It can be just wild things that happen, like letters that somehow appear that are the names or the initials of the person that has passed away. It can come in a wide variety. But in general, for me, because I'm in tune and I know for sure, that these are people that are communicating with me, mostly it'll be the imagery, but also a feeling. For example, everybody, whether you're physical or whether you're in spirit, has an energy, right? Like you have your own personality, you have your own energy to you. And when we die, we still maintain that same energy, but it's almost as if it's amplified. So you still feel that when you're sensitive enough, or when you believe it and you're in tune with it, that still exists, and it's very powerful. So that's sort of another way, is I can definitely feel individually who is, around at the moment, and who's communicating. Also, though, a lot of the times they don't necessarily come through individually. They come through as like a collective consciousness. They come through as saying, hey, we're here to say this to you, as your sort of army of angels. And that's sort of why I also coined the term the relatives, because a lot of times it's not, in the spirit world, it's not necessarily so individual. A lot of the times it's very much like a collective consciousness, an army of people, who have your back and saying, hey, this is what we're here to do and to help you with, and these are our messages.
I have a question about, because I used to see a lot of like psychics, and I used to go to a lot of that. And then there was this moment when I was kind of like, why am I reaching outside myself for someone to tell me about myself? And so then I went through this whole like spell of like, no one can tell me what is best for me. Like I'm gonna, tune into my own inner truth and inner wisdom. And I know there is benefits to like having someone guide you. Could you share with us what you think are the benefits of someone, assisting you in your evolution versus always just thinking you have the answers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for you, I think that you're on the right track because you're very in tune. You're very in tune with yourself. You're very sensitive, to non-physical energy. So I think that for you, you were probably feeling that you didn't necessarily need, an outside person to help guide you, because you are really sensitive to what's out there. And probably honestly, if you had a little bit of guidance in interpreting some of the non-physical energy and how to receive very specific messages, you yourself, I honestly believe that anybody can do mediumship. I really do. I think that for people that really have no clue how to, or are on the fence, or just don't know what to believe, then, going to someone can be really profound, because it gives them absolutely 100% validation that their relatives are there and that they are helping and communicating with them. However, I have to say that even myself, like I said, I've always been really intuitive, really psychic, but I went to mediums and psychics for a long time. And it was mostly because I was searching for very specific people in my life that had passed away. Basically, what brought me into mediumship is that two of the most important people in my life had passed away when I was really young. And I was seeking to find out, where they were, or, what happens after death. Like I really needed to know where they were, what state were they in? Were they around? Were they with me, or were they just like sitting up on a cloud, or do I get visits from them? I didn't know specifically. So even though myself, I knew that I was very intuitive, I didn't know exactly how that all worked.
Did
So
you
I
ever
went
find
to a
out?
medium. Absolutely. So I went to various psychics, and no one ever really hit it on the head for me. But there was this one medium that I went to who absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, proved to me that this was real, and that my relatives were around, and validate that for me. And he was actually the person that I said, look, you've proved to me that this is real, and I need you to teach me what it is that you do. So he was actually my teacher. But we only had about maybe 2 sessions before I understood how to interpret messages. And so yeah, I think.
So you actually
Go ahead.
had, so you actually had somebody like refine your skills for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I did. He taught me, because the thing about mediumship is that what you really have to learn is how to interpret what it is that they're communicating to you, and then also how to verbalize that. So a lot of people think that they just say something to you and then you say it to your client, and that's not always how it is. A lot of the times they'll give you an overwhelming feeling, and then you have to verbalize what it is that you're feeling. Sometimes they'll give you just imagery, and you have to communicate the imagery, and a lot of times the imagery doesn't make any sense to you, but it makes perfect sense to your client. So you definitely have to refine what it is that you're experiencing. And that's really what he taught me. And yeah, so I think that there's benefits to seeing psychics and mediums for all people, for sure. It just really depends on what it is that you're looking for and looking to get out of sessions.
Totally. Yeah. Will you share a time when maybe in the beginning, when you were working with clients, that you questioned the information coming through or your ability to actually do it, and how did you handle that?
In the beginning, I was definitely I just didn't want to be wrong. You know what I mean? That was the greatest fear, is like this stuff is coming through, and I didn't want them to be like, no,
Right.
no. That was my greatest fear. And I wanted to do well, So in the beginning, there definitely was times where I was less confident in my in what I was saying. For example, I'll give you an example. So one of my very first actual paid for readings, the grandmother was coming through to one of my clients, and she was showing me an image of white butterflies. And that's all she was doing, right? Just white butterflies. So to me, I had to just say, I'm seeing white butterflies. And my client was like, yes, every time I see white butterflies, I think that that's my grandma.
Wow.
So over time, I learned that I gained the confidence, that even though it doesn't make sense to me, it can be very profound for my clients. And really what you have to do as a medium is take yourself out of the equation. You can't judge. You really have to sit out, take yourself completely out of the equation and allow whatever is coming through to come through. And it's not your job to judge it, to even think about it. All you do is communicate it. And sometimes it's not going to make sense. Every once in a while it's not going to make sense, and that's okay. Every once in a while something will come through and I'll say it and they're like, I'm not really sure. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. We're going to put that aside for a second and maybe come back to it. And then every once in a while the client will say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I do remember that. Or yeah, I think I do know what they're talking about, actually. So it just took some time to gain that confidence, that, and trust in the relatives that this is real.
Yeah. So it seems like your path with all this has been, a gradual process, and just learning to trust what comes up and just continue the process. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think people get wrong about mediumship and the spirit world and all that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions. I think that one of the misconceptions is, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared to open myself up to that type of world or that type of energy,
Mhm.
in fear of inviting like bad spirits or bad energy. And I have to say that in my experience, like I said, I've been doing this for 12 years and been what I consider, extremely psychic for all my life. I've never had a bad spirit experience.
Mm.
My other thing that I want to say about it, and I don't want to say that my word is like the end all of everything, but from what I understand about the spirit world, is that when we reemerge into non-physical, we reemerge into a place of pure positive energy.
Mhm.
So when people do talk about experiencing, negative, bad spirits or that kind of thing, it's more in the form of like thought forms that are still
Mhm.
existing. So that's one
Like
misconception.
negative thought forms.
Negative thought forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like actually bad spirits that are out to get you. So that's one misconception.
Mhm.
Another misconception, again, kind of like what I was talking about in the beginning, is that, um, that you have to have someone very specific that you're trying to connect with. And that's not the case at all. Even if, okay, let's say you had never had anybody that you knew that passed away, like at all,
Mhm.
we could have a fantastic reading still, because you
Mhm.
still have an army of relatives
Mhm.
guiding you and supporting you, and and they tend to be people that are your family, maybe that you don't know. People that have passed away a long time ago,
Mhm.
great great grandparents or that kind of thing. And also people that are in the same type of profession or have the same type of interest that you do. So they
Mhm.
also gravitate towards you. So a lot of people think that they're kind of on their own in this physical world, but what they don't realize is that they have a whole group of people that are supporting them and giving them impulses and giving them inspiration in the things that they're interested in.
Mhm.
So, often I do feel energy, like when I'm choreographing or dancing, of people that I don't know, but I feel inspiration from these like dancers or choreographers that are
Mhm.
helping me. So, that's sort of another misconception, is that it's not just, hey, this person passed away and I need to connect. And that's what I want a lot of people to know. It's like, hey, anybody can benefit from working with a medium and getting that support and that guidance and that broader perspective.
Mhm. How would like, let's say for the people that are listening and maybe they're interested in working with a spirit medium or going to have a reading, how could they tune into themselves to know if this person is the right match for um, a reading?
Hmm, it's a good question. I would say it all boils down to those impulses. So people have to really trust what it is that they're feeling. um, it all boils down to that little feeling that you get, whether it's in your chest or your stomach, and sort of listening inward to hear, like, and asking, is this the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? What should I do? And the answers will come in the form of like an impulse or an inspiration. That's how spirit communicates so much of the time.
Mhm.
However, I have to say that we're not here to only be guided to just positive experiences, right? So even if you get an impulse to go somewhere, let's say to a psychic, and it's a bad experience, that doesn't mean that that impulse was wrong, because that potentially could lead to something else, or could give you a lesson that you needed to learn. We're not only here to just go from one positive experience to the other, right? I mean, I have to say, everything that I've lived through in my life has brought me to where I am now, and I wouldn't change any of it. I just made a post on Facebook, and it was something extremely personal. It was about dealing with depression and anxiety, and how I got to a point of really deep despair at one point. This is actually right before I got into mediumship, and I got to my breaking point, basically. And I wouldn't necessarily change any of that. And I actually believe that the relatives and that it was my life's purpose to get to that deep, dark place in order to come out of it. So I had a much more broader understanding, so I could empathize. And not only that, so that I had a bigger range of understanding, so that when I do readings, I have a bigger sort of database, because what happens is the relatives use a lot of times your life experience in order to communicate with your clients. They have to be able to use what's inside of you to be able to communicate, right? So I have a big catalog of things that they're able to use to communicate. And so I wouldn't necessarily take any of that back. And I think that's important for people to know, is that even if you're going through a really bad time or having negative experiences, not to condone that, or not to say that you're doing something wrong or this is bad. Life is not about just only, one great experience to the next. It's all about learning and growing, and the bad makes the good so much better.
That's some wisdom right there. Yeah, I really love that you preferenced that about, we're not gonna only have these good, amazing experiences. Like, life is full of everything, and it is true, those experiences that are seemingly hard or negative really either teach us something or wake us up to something. So I really love that you made a point about that. And I'm curious, like, when you were going, I would love for you to go back to this moment in time when you were feeling anxiety and depression, and what was that like for you, and what was it about?
Oh gosh, it was horrible. I mean, to be totally honest, I'll be completely frank. I grew up in a pretty chaotic household. I did have everything that I needed as far as my needs were met. I did grow up in a wealthy household. So all my needs were met. I had nice clothes and a nice house and all the toys and stuff that I needed. But things were pretty dysfunctional and chaotic. And when I was 15, I moved to a new town, brand new town, from Los Angeles to Northern California. And the first day that we moved, my little brother, who I really helped caretake for most of my life, and he was 8 years old, and he very mysteriously was killed, basically. We found him floating off of one of the cliffs in Northern California. It was a very, very mysterious situation. Like, it was supposed to be an accident, but in my heart of hearts, I know that it was not. Something very sinister happened. I just know that it was some type of foul play. And so that sort of set me off right away. I mean, I was in this brand new town. I had to make new friends. I had to, start school in a couple weeks. Within 6 months, my mom had left my dad. And so it was a very, very difficult time in my life. So I got through it, and I got through it a lot of the time with the help of my cousin, who I've been extremely close to for all of my life. And in my mid-20s, he passed away. And that really set me off, because he was really my rock. He was the person that I basically used as my support, So after he passed away, it was like I really felt completely alone in the world, like I had nobody that I could lean on. And so that really started me down my train of being really depressed, really anxious. It gave me a lot of post-traumatic stress. I got to the point where, the phone couldn't even ring. There couldn't even be a knock at the door. My anxiety was on such high alert. I was so hyper vigilant that nothing could happen around me without throwing me into the most major panic attack. And I really needed some, professional help at that point. So it got really dark. I mean, to live that way for years, it's so hard, on the mind and the body and the spirit. And I basically was incapable of living a normal life at that point. So I did get to a really, really dark place, deep despair. And my grandparents did step in at one point, and they did send me to a doctor. And he wasn't a very good doctor. Bless their hearts, they were trying. But they sent me to a doctor, and he prescribed me like 5 different medications to start all on one night. So I took them all. And it kind of made me go crazy. Like, I went nuts. And so I did try to attempt to take my life. And I did, do an overdose, and, ended up in a 72-hour hold in the hospital. And, after I got out of that, I did have some family members that stepped in and realized that I really needed some like good help. And so I did, when I got out of that, I got some really, really good help, like one of the best in Los Angeles. And I got healthy. And it was right after that, actually, that I got into mediumship and started doing that. So I really believe that between the mediumship and the doctor that I was seeing, it really saved my life. And that's really what my book is about, is all the lessons that I've learned between my doctor and the spirits. And the book even starts actually with the overdose, with the suicide attempt. Because it just goes to show you that you can go from being in the deepest, darkest, because that's about as bad as it gets, right?
I want to pause you. I want to pause you for a second. Yeah. First off, wow, that is huge. Like, I had no idea that you gone through all this. So I just want to really thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that part of yourself on here, because a lot of people don't want to speak about that, but I find that this kind of vulnerable speaking really relates to a lot of people, because more than not, a lot of people go through these deep, dark depressions and despair, and they don't know how to deal with it. What advice could you give someone that maybe just lost someone close to them and is maybe doing drugs, or just having a really hard time coping with reality? What advice could you give them to start their healing journey?
I would say that, well, first of all, it's a process. So you can't just stop, and say, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have to stop. Maybe some people can. Maybe some people can just have almost like a quantum leap and But for me, I know for me, it was a process, and you have to kind of go through it and learn from these experiences, and then come out of it and realize what it is that you want, right? So when I was in that really deep, dark place, and then once I experienced being in a mental hospital for 3 days, and the horror of that, because that's not a pretty situation, you come out of it and you realize this is not what I want, and I want to get better. And so all of life comes from what it is that you are wanting and intending. And the universe and the relatives, that's what they respond to. And that's what they're going to help guide you with, is this intention that you have to get better, or to whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to latch on to that energy, to that intention. So I would say, for people that are really struggling right now, know that it's a process. Know that eventually things are going to change within you, and to latch on to that energy, that when you know that you are finding those impulses to feel better, or there's an impulse to go and do something that you know is going to change your situation, to really follow those, because that's spirit guiding you into a different direction that's ultimately going to make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's just a wild story. What do you think was the main thing that helped you heal? Was it going to this doctor, or what really gave you that strength to continue on this healing path?
I think for sure the doctor, I mean, I definitely owe my life to this doctor. This is a big one. And I think this is really important to say. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety and depression, and, maybe even substance abuse, whatever it is that you're dealing with, you're not a bad person. You're not somebody that doesn't deserve happiness. And I think, and that was part of the post that I made, was that there's such a stigma, around this mental health crisis that we have, where people feel ashamed, like they don't deserve to feel better because they've gotten themselves into a place to begin with. So many people deal with feeling this way, and they just don't even admit to it because they're ashamed.
Right.
And I'm here to say that there's no shame in it. Life sometimes puts us in these situations because that's part of our path. In fact, it should be celebrated.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, you're in this horrible place, but you know what? This is going to be an important part of your life. This is going to be an important part of your learning and growth process. And we're here to support you through this, but I know that it's going to get better. And that's a lot of the times what the relatives have to say in readings, when people are feeling really, really bad. It's like, hey, yeah, this is the way that it is right now, but it's not always going to be like this. And this is going to be part of what your learning and growth process is going to be. So I really want people to feel brave enough to come out and say, hey, I'm feeling really bad right now, even extremely dark, but I deserve to feel better. And I know that it's coming. And I think that that's so important, that because the shame and the guilt, I mean, I remember before I saw my doctor, I felt so much shame and guilt. And especially after the suicide attempt, people were really angry at me. They really were upset with me. And that didn't help. That made me feel so horrible about myself, when in reality, what I needed was support.
Exactly.
And, so I think that's important for people to know. And I want the stigma to change. I want people to be more understanding and less judgmental about people that are really, really struggling right now, because it's only going to help them heal. The shame and the guilt, it only made it worse. And this doctor of mine, that's what he did for me. He made me realize that I was deserving and that I wasn't a bad person because I was experiencing this low time in my life. And that was life-changing for me.
Yeah. It's interesting. Our society it's like, oh, if you share that you had, suicidal thoughts, or you tried to commit suicide, it's like you get shamed for it. But then if someone does commit suicide or something, they're like, why didn't they reach out? Why didn't they, so it's like this double standard. It's like, what do you really want, world? Do you want us to come out and openly talk about it? Or do you want to just, have these detrimental thoughts and behaviors? And,
Mhm.
for anyone that may be struggling with that kind of thing, I reach out to somebody you trust. And if there's
Mhm.
nobody you really trust in your circle, find professional help. Like there's tons
Mhm.
of people out there that can really help. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to have that courage to just share and tell somebody for support. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, I just want to thank you for going deeper into, your darkness and your despair and depression. And I know this will resonate with people that are around there. And I know we're running out of time here. So I would love to end this interview with my question of, for people just beginning their journey of self awareness, what's a token of truth that you could offer someone to really help them on their journey?
You know, I'm a really firm believer that everybody has the capability of being a medium or lightly saying it, tuning into spirit. Everybody. Uh, it may come across in different ways, but everybody has that capability. So I think that the world would be a much easier place to navigate if people just trust a little bit more. Trust what they're feeling, trust those impulses. Trust if you feel inspired to do something, trust it, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it feels illogical, even if you don't understand it. If you feel that strong impulse, whether it's in your heart or your stomach or wherever it is that you feel those energetic feelings, trust that. And if you're struggling with something, ask whatever it is that you believe, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in the spirits. My religion is the relatives. Whatever it is that you believe, ask for that guidance. I really believe that this whole life path that we're on would be so much easier to navigate if people utilized the power of non-physical. And it's easy, it's not hard. So just ask and see what sort of feelings come up. If you're struggling with something, ask. See, what imagery comes up in your head, see what feelings come up in your heart, and you're going to be really satisfied with the results from that. And like I said, life is way more fun, more magical. And I went from being in the mental hospital completely in despair to now feeling really happy, healthy, completely in tune with spirit. And I trust the path that I'm on, and I trust the relatives, and I no longer would ever go back to that place of not being able to find my way out of something. Even
Mm,
if I went back to feeling really
mhm,
depressed again, I know that it's just a part, just a
mhm,
little section, and
mhm,
that's okay, and that I have help and that it's there.
mhm,
So that's the main thing that I want people to know, is that help is there for everybody, not just mediums.
mhm. Awesome. That was beautiful. And if people are feeling inspired by this interview, where can they find you?
Well, you can email me at therelativesspeak@gmail.
Mm,
I'm also on Instagram, relatively speaking. They can contact you and text me.
mm.
But yeah, I'm open to talking to anybody. I would love to, give sessions and readings with anybody. I'm extremely open and pretty flexible right now.
Awesome.
So
So
although I am getting booked up a lot right now with readings,
that's
but
great.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Awesome. Thank you. And I will link all the your email and your Instagram to the show notes. So if you guys are looking for her, you guys can put it there. And if this really touched your heart or inspired you or could benefit somebody, please share it. You never know whose life this is going to change. And thank you guys for joining us if you've come this far. And until next time, have a beautiful week.